amid a brutal new air campaign by the Russians against Ukraine's civilian population. We've got it all this race day weekend in Washington, including our best in the business panel of journalists who always know they are wanted.
I heard you missed me. Here I am.
The Hill Sunday starts now. Hello from Washington and welcome to the Hill Sunday. I'm Chris Steyerwalt. Well, the United States has been preoccupied with the stalemate with Iran. Much of the world is watching with horror as the conflict between Ukraine and Russia enters an even more dangerous phase. In central Ukraine, a so-called double-tap strike by Russian drones on a busy shopping center killed at least 16 and left 130 injured as part of a terror campaign by Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. The second strike was timed to kill those who emerged after the first blast and some rescuers. It's the latest escalation by the Kremlin in an effort to break the will of the Ukrainian people in what is now a 4.5-year-long conflict that Russia is losing on the battlefield. Former Vice President Mike Pence joins us now from Kyiv, where I am told he has just met with President Zelensky. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. What did you learn today from President Zelensky? What can you tell us?
Well, Chris, thanks for having me on. I had an opportunity to address the national prayer breakfast this morning, but President Zelensky and I met afterwards in a private discussion, and I have to tell you that you sense in that packed room right here in the heart of Kiev the resolve and the determination of the people of Ukraine. 4.5 years after that brutal and unprovoked invasion by Russia, I sense that the steely will, commitment to defend their freedom is even greater today than the day that the Russian tanks first rolled. So President Zelensky and I talked about their specific needs, but the first impression I want to give your viewers around the country is that the people of Ukraine are on a frontier of freedom. And as I said today at the breakfast, I think this battle is part of the long-standing battle between liberty and tyranny, between good and evil. And now more than ever, the people of Ukraine deserve the support of the American people, of our allies across the free world. And with that support, they will continue to win this fight against the Russian war machine.
Okay, the war machine you described and this terror campaign, and I hear from you about the resolve of the Ukrainian people and the willingness to fight and stand on this front line of freedom. But certainly, at least, the success of these strikes by the Russians speaks to the shortcomings in their air defenses in central Ukraine. The United States continues to provide support, but clearly there are gaps here. What is needed?
Well, you're absolutely right. Look, the brave Ukrainian soldiers and President Zelensky have really changed the equation here. The reason you were right in the opening, and I restated that Ukraine is winning, is because they've essentially reinvented warfare. Their drone attacks into the heart of Russia have changed the dynamics. They've sunk Russian ships in the Black Sea. It's extraordinary what they've done. And there's essentially a stalemate by all accounts on the front line in Donbass. But what the Russians have shifted to your point, is cruise missiles and essentially high arch ballistic missiles that require interceptors, that require Patriot missiles or THAAD technology to be able to take down. And President Zelensky again reiterated to me what he said publicly, that he's anxious to see the United States make up to 5% of our Patriot resources available to make it possible for Ukraine to beat back those ballistic missile attacks. Stopping those ballistic missile attacks essentially it will in many ways take the last fighting tool out of Vladimir Putin's hands but left unprotected, President Zelensky made it clear to me that Putin is going to use those ballistic missiles to strike particularly, not just like he did at a children's hospital this week, not just as he did at a shopping mall this week, but he'll use that to take out the energy infrastructure here as winter approaches. And it is absolutely essential that we see our allies around the world and the United States continue to come to the aid and support of the brave Ukrainian warriors.
Well, you know that one of the limiting factors for U.S. aid to Ukraine is that, at least it looks from where I'm sitting, like our military is stretched thin right now. Midterm anxieties, or what I believe are midterm anxieties, have stalled Pentagon funding in Washington. Congress left town without approving spending on an Iran war that's unpopular with voters. And whether it's the abrupt end of the scheduled exercises with South Korea or the struggle to maintain air defenses for our troops and our allies in the Middle East, I have to think China, Russia, and other hostile states have to be taking note of this, right?
Well, I don't think there's any question. Look, China has become the arsenal of authoritarianism on the world stage. And America has always been the arsenal of democracy, and we need to continue to make it possible for free nations in Europe and across the world to join us in that cause. But let me be clear. I want to say the Trump administration, while direct aid has ceased, I'm pleased to learn the Trump administration has not stood in the way of our European allies purchasing weapons and making those available to Ukraine. I was pleased the Congress, at least the Senate, passed the Lindsey Graham Sanctions Act. I'm anticipating House action. But the message I got here in Ukraine today from President Zelensky and, frankly, many rank-and-file military personnel is just the vital importance of being able to take down those ballistic missiles. And whether it's the United States or whether it's calling on our allies like President Lee in South Korea to make their interceptors available to the United States for deployment in the Middle East or here in Ukraine, I think now is a real time for focus to put that sword in the hand of the Ukrainian military, give them the ability to knock down those ballistic missiles, and we may well be on the road to a just and lasting peace.
All right. While I have you, I can't let you go without getting your insight on what's going on with Iran specifically, though. It's something we've talked about before, and it's a mission that you have told us is essential. But given the lack of resources and the authorization, the lacking authorization from Congress, the administration does seem to have settled on a waiting game with Tehran, going back to economic sanctions to weaken the regime. But I have to say, Iran has demonstrated a long-standing willingness and the ability to allow its own people to suffer in order to retain power. Why should we think this time will be any different?
Right. Well, I was encouraged to hear President Trump describe a D-Day of economic sanctions. Look, the United States, while some are quibbling about it right now, the United States is the reserve currency for the world. We have the ability to put enormous economic pressure on Iran. The Lindsey Graham bill was expanded to actually include sanctions against countries that are fueling Iran's war machine and essentially resupplying Iran after our military did a brilliant job taking down 13,000 sites in 4 weeks, sunk their navy, took down their air defenses. But the economic pressure will be essential. But, Chris, where I stand, having been an observer, my years in the Congress, and then, of course, was vice president of the terrorist regime of mullahs in Iran, I go back to my belief that one doesn't make peace with one's enemy. One makes peace with one's defeated enemy. And I think the time will come, whether it's in the near future or in the months ahead, that it will be essential for the United States of America and Israel to unleash our armed forces to finish the job and convince that terrorist regime in Tehran to come to the table and end their nuclear ambitions, end the sowing of violence, and restore freedom of navigation in the Gulf.
Former Vice President Mike Pence making time for us from Kyiv today. We thank you very much. Okay, with us now right here in studio is Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. She represents the 24th District that's in and around Dallas. Congresswoman, we thank you for being here. Talking to the former Vice President, he says, you know, sooner or later you're going to have to finish the job. One of the reasons that the president couldn't finish the job in Iran if he wanted to right now is the military doesn't have the funding that it needs. We're limiting the military exercises with South Korea, citing cost. We hear that the munition stockpiles are low. Should Congress have left town without getting that work done? Well,
Congress, you know, the House of Representatives did pass that funding. It's very frustrating that the Senate left town without doing that. The majority of the money was going to restock, as you said, our stockpiles that were down. I think the place that we are in with Iran, considering where we were just a few short months ago, now, you know, as the former vice president has mentioned, their Navy is gone. We're looking at their nuclear that is buried, you know, all their nuclear materials buried under a mountain. We had this terroristic regime that for the last almost 50 years just chanted death to America, sponsored terrorism, who's now their nuclear, their Navy, their air systems are destroyed. So I think, you know, the fact that they were such an enemy to us, and now you've got, you know, the Strait of Hormuz, we've got ways around that. Pipelines are being built, you know, to be able to take their last piece of leverage away. I think a huge amount of gratitude goes to this administration. A huge amount of gratitude goes to our American military. But yeah, we need to make sure that they are funded. We need to make sure that our stockpiles are sound. And again, the Congress did its job. You know, the House of Representatives, we passed this before we left for our August time away from D.C. And I really wish that the Senate had stayed and done its job.
But when we talk to Senate Republicans, they say it's the House's fault because the House won't pass legislation that can get through the Senate because Democrats aren't coming on board. So you need something that could gain more support. And I understand.
Well, then the Senate could actually show us what that was. They could have done something while they were still in the office and then send it back to the House. Instead, they decide not to even touch it and move on.
Do you think it's because of midterms?
People can say that, but literally, we are up for election every 2 years.
Well, you guys.
Oh, you're talking about the Senate.
But in the Senate, do you think that it's midterms?
I think in the Senate, if it's for midterms, that's a possibility. But I think, quite honestly, if they look at some of the issues that they have left unresolved, that were 80-20 issues, that the Senate would be really, I think, in a much better place, specifically because Republicans have the majority. We don't have the 60, threshold, the 60 count that we need to get massive legislation passed without the bipartisan, approach that you mentioned. But I do believe that it would have been in their best interest to at least force those votes to happen, put people on the record for why they're not supporting them.
Okay. I don't expect you to know everything about this, but I have to ask some breaking news today. New York Times reporting that Jared Kushner, who is now playing a lead role in trying to bring this negotiation to a conclusion, meeting with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries behind closed doors. Does that tell us anything about what the administration's expectation for November is?
No, I think what you mentioned earlier, I talk to my Democrat colleagues all the time. I don't think there's a problem at all. People complain that we don't talk enough. I think this is showing that the administration is trying to strike deals. They are trying to come up with compromise.